I want to know everything there is to know about you.
I am going to introduce me.
You must have spotted her by now. She's always there.
Don't I deserve love?
Somebody has to like me best.
But don't you see, it raises the problem of sex.
I assure you, matron, I wouldn't dream of bothering you in that way.
And I meant with the girls. They're liable to come into contact with boys.
Oh, yes, but I don't think that'll be a problem. It's been my experience that once young people sample the delights of country life and the wonders of nature, they just can't get enough of it.
Exactly.
I was thinking of the girls.
So was I.
Exactly.
Hello, and welcome to the Don't Know Her podcast. I'm Michael.
And I am Scott.
And today we are doing something very special. So instead of talking about one actor, we're looking at a franchise instead.
Yeah, changing up big style.
And not just any franchise, but the largest British franchise ever in film.
Is that right? That makes sense to me, but I didn't know that fact.
Yeah. And also the second longest running British film franchise after James Bond. It is the Carry On films.
Oh, matron!
That's more like Mrs. Doubtfire than Kenneth Williams.
Oh no, that's my default. Oh god, we stepped away from the natural.
But no bad thing. Yeah, there has been 31 Carry On movies. And we'll go and we'll give a bit of history and background to that. But they are in some ways a staple of British culture. Like, I wouldn't even say British film because I feel like it's not considered, like, I don't know if it's in the BFI as a retrospective. I can't imagine, like, it doesn't feel like that's the sort of venue for that sort of British film. It feels much more something that's owned by the public and loved by the public and less about like the film makers as an establishment embracing this film. Not to say that it doesn't have its place, and we'll get into that, but it just feels very much like a popular sort of piece of entertainment rather than, you know, the Powell and Pressburger movies or anything else, like any other sort of series of films you can think of. David Lean, let's say.
No, for sure. That's a good point. I think because they became such a mainstay on British television, and especially British daytime television, which in hindsight is an interesting choice. I think it feels, even though they feel filmic and cinematic in their own way, it feels, I think, exactly as you're describing, owned by the public and belonging to like the British people because it has become that sort of staple of British TV.
Yeah, that's a really good point too, and that's how I first came to it as a young boy. I couldn't tell you what the first one I saw was, but there used to be on UTV in Ireland, ITV in England, and I feel like they were on all the time. I remember taping them, like rewatching them, loving them, or a lot of them, loving a lot of them, not all of them.
Sure.
Because as we'll get into, quality isn't consistent. But I just love the type of tone, these sort of like innuendo-filled, campy, naughty in a cheeky sort of way films. Which, you know, if we're talking about like, say, queer representation, Carry On has a lot of queerness in it.
Very much.
And there wouldn't have been that much, you know, which is why also as a kid I would have loved soap operas, because you have very queer themed or campy characters that are not explicitly queer, but you can read into them as you like. Which, yeah, so I was really drawn to Carry On as a kid. I remember saving up money and buying the videotapes.
Wow.
Yeah, watching them with like my grandparents, like nobody thinking how strange, I guess it's not strange, and I'm not trying to shame it, but like it at that time in the 90s for a little boy to be, you know, adoring Carry On is a bit of a telltale sign. Yeah, they think my obsession with Barbara Windsor in Carry On and EastEnders was a heterosexual one, and I'm not sure. I just don't understand, perhaps where that misguidance came from. But yeah. So, and what about you? Like, where does Carry On sit in your sort of filmic like filmic knowledge. In your cinematic brain, where does this sit?
It very much linked to what I was saying about it existing in sort of daytime television. So weekends and holidays as a kid, like they were always on. We're not just talking that, oh, at Christmas you might expect one. No, all the time. Any bank holiday, any weekend, all the time. So I kind of just remember them being very much background viewing very often. So I'm sorry I didn't commit to them in the same way that you did. And it would be something I remember watching with my grandparents too. It's something that would be on the background when I was with them. Um, and I reckon in my brain it is, and I don't know which of them it was, but either Carry On Nurse, Carry On Doctor, or Carry On Matron. One of those was the kind of entry point for me because I remember those most vividly as a kid. I remember being in my living room, and I remember Charles Houghton in particular in those films, and in specifically in that the hospital situation. But a real fondness. I think I feel it very tied to British and maybe specifically English type culture. You often see it written about as the sort of beach town postcard, naughty postcard sort of come to
Yeah.
life in film. And that feels very, very fair. And even though as a franchise it's maybe aged like many things do,
Terribly.
it's terribly in
At
some
points,
cases,
terribly, yes.
at points terribly. Um, Something about it feels very, very true of British culture and British humor in particular. So a real fondness and a delight to actually go back and watch some of them.
Yes, we didn't watch all 31. Although we didn't save ourselves from the worst of Carry
We
On in
didn't,
our
unfortunately.
selections.
No.
But yeah, it's really interesting because yeah, it has aged a lot. It makes sense that they're not remembered, but then there is a place for it still, I would argue, in terms of English culture, in terms of queer culture,
Oh yeah.
in terms of the actors that were involved, who perhaps didn't get the opportunities to showcase their range because of their association with the carry-ons. It's just a really interesting kind of institution, which, even though they do threaten every few years they're going to bring it back, makes sense it's from the 60s, 70s,
It
and
does. Yeah.
sadly continues to the into the early 90s. But yeah, like it just feels of its time, and it's so interesting as a capsule, almost. But I still would sit and watch, and even the really quite aged humor I find endearing to a point because of it's coming from an almost innocent place. And the other thing is very kind of rooted in working classness in a way which I don't suspect was very common in at that time in cinema. And there'd be things like Passport to Pimlico and things like that, which would have highlighted working class people and in a comedic sort of entertaining way. But this feels very much like made by working class people for working class people and totally ignores everyone else in a way. Like it feels like it's meant to be populist. And there's something I find really endearing about it. I was trying to think of what would be a contemporary equivalent, and I dreaded all the things that came to mind, like Mrs. Brown's Boys.
Yeah.
I was like, no, I don't like that humor. I think it's so broad and gaudy, and it has no real heart, and yet then this always ends in a sentimental tone. Mrs. Brown's Boys with her little message, but it's all kind of fake. I don't know, but then I'm like, I'm the problem. Like I would be the person giving out about Carry On then, surely, if I'm giving out about Mrs. Brown's Boys, like this populist thing. But as it is, kind of as a piece of nostalgic Englishness that doesn't, as far as I can, in my bubble of the world, it doesn't exist anymore. I'm quite glad they're still around, that you can watch them on Amazon Prime or wherever you might have them.
Yeah, there's plenty of places to still access these films. Yeah, they're fun, and they're not. The Mrs. Brown's Boys is a very good comparison point, but I think Mrs. Brown's Boys is more immediately crass in a way that I don't think Carry On ever was. It was more playful. It felt. I don't find Brown's Boys to be as playful, but it is still that. It's still kind of. It's an incredibly popular show. So yeah, clearly we're not the audience for it. So interesting that we do still enjoy the Carry On situation.
Exactly, yeah. And if any of these films that particularly we've watched for this podcast were released as they are today, as new movies, you'd be horrified. You would be. There's blackface. There's awful tropes about women in particular. Um, kind of homophobia, kind of casual like everything, transphobia, any sort of like anything that's not kind of heteronormative is kind of laughed at. I will say men are laughed at too, but they're rewarded. They're not really punished in the same way. But these are at their core something I would not be celebrating today, and I presume back then. But I still, because of my personal attachment, I'm like, there is some value in this. And there's one film in particular that I rate very highly in terms of the comedy and the writing and the style and the aesthetic. Um, that kind of, I don't know, it's like the height of what Carry On could do and could be.
Yeah, no, fair enough. There is really good stuff in there. I mean, there's so many films, but there are gems, for sure amongst that. But yes, glad to be guided back to Carry On by you.
And speaking of which, let me give a little rundown of the Carry On franchise. As we mentioned, Carry On has had 31 films to date, with the first one being Carry On Sergeant. It was not intended to be a franchise, but the success of Sergeant carried on to Nurse, which was successful not just in England but also in America, and that led to Carry On Teacher and Carry On Constable, and then we have a series. All of those first films were written by a man called Norman Hoodus, and the tone of those, while still like a cheeky wink about sexual innuendos and all that sort of thing, is a bit more refined almost than what we get later.
What a pity I'm not allowed to bring the children.
Yes, it's allowed in the private wards.
Oh, well, we couldn't afford that.
Hush.
What?
Oh, nothing. Rhoda, dear, do try to say pardon, not what.
Sorry, Henry. Do you like this?
What? I mean, pardon?
So Norman is replaced by a man called Talbot Rothwell, who then goes into the much more bawdy sort of postcard or seaside postcard humor.
There is news from Egypt that Ptolemy is trying to usurp Cleopatra.
Trying to do what with her?
Usurper.
Sounds positively revolting.
Naughty, dirty humor that you were referring to, where we get like Carry On Camping, Carry On Up the Khyber, and then parodies of popular films like Carry On Spying, which was like a play on, say, James Bond, Carry On Cleo, which was all these big Roman epics, and Carry On Cowboy on westerns, and Carry On Screaming, which were about the kind of Hammer horror, Addams Family type films and stories. And they were the two main writers of Carry On. And then their departure, or the departure of Rothwell, really did signal this change of direction with the last handful of films. So you, instead of like hinting at sex and nudity, you were actually seeing nudity in Carry On England. And then you were also having very explicit conversations about sex in Carry On Emmanuel, both films which were given a rating which meant people under 14 couldn't see, and they were not very popular.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, because that feels like such a departure then.
And then there's quite a large gap between Carry On Emmanuel, and then in 1992 we have the very last Carry On Columbus, which we will be talking about, is a film where not many of the Carry On regulars are present, and is have like people like Julian Clary replacing them. And it was pretty much a dud. Like, it made money, but it was a critical disappointment. I guess sounds like a kind of a pleasant way to say it, but also everyone involved was pretty embarrassed. Like, all these films were directed by Gerald Thomas, and he even seemed embarrassed by what Carry On Columbus was doing in 1992. But having said that, it was popular at Carry On Columbus, like all of the films, really. They were all moderately to very successful in England. And outside of England, some of them kind of like in America, I think Carry On Nurse is the most popular internationally. But they were also like renamed, some of them for different territories. So like Carry On Spying was renamed Agent Ooh. Or I'm not quite sure how you're supposed to say it in some countries to try and get people to go. Carry On Cowboy was renamed the Rumpo Kid in Germany, and in Germany also Carry On Abroad was called A Mad Holiday. So they were, trying to find audiences in different ways. All of these films were very cheaply made and very quickly made at Pinewood Studios, to the point where like the actors there, their fee didn't change throughout the course of the series until Carry On Columbus. And they also, if they were doing outdoor scenes, so they'd be going within a radius of Pinewood Studios, but they had to be able to get there and back in a day. It does seem very, like, I would love to see a film about the making of Carry On to a point, because it seems kind of not haphazard, but very, I don't know, like, it must have been exciting and fun and all these things, but stressful, and the personalities involved, which we should get to, because the ensemble cast are some amazing actors. So you have Kenneth Williams, you have Charles Hawtrey, you have Barbara Windsor, Kenneth Connor, Joan Sims, Hattie Jacques, and Sid James, of course. There's so many others that would pop in or would be also regulars. They're just all so good, and I think that's half the joy of Carry On, is being able to see these actors play different parts and different types of characters. At a time where I think typecasting would have been a big deal. You wouldn't have somebody playing like Julius Caesar, and then the next day playing like this dead vampire-esque sort of character, and then playing like a teacher in charge of a group of girls, all these sorts of things.
Yeah.
I mean, it's probably a stretch to say Kenneth Williams is playing totally different people all the time, because he is definitely playing a type. A campy person, basically a gay with a clipboard, is mostly his vibe for a lot of his performances. Yeah. But it is still very exciting to be able to see them jump into different parts. And like these would have been household names.
Oh yeah.
Sadly, a lot of these people are not anymore, and that's half the reason when I thought of Carry On, I was like, oh, I'd love to be able to talk about these actors.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That was the exciting thing for me too, was thinking about these people, and the only real opportunity we can talk about these people is because of these films.
Exactly, and they have such a iconic, in a way, place in British culture.
Yeah.
But there's something about the artistry or the talent which I feel like is properly ignored. And like, I have not seen all 31.
What? I thought you actually had, genuinely.
I've not, because I was a child. Like Emmanuel, I did not see, which is the second last one, which is a send-up of these kind of sex comedies, situational comedies, and I wasn't allowed to watch that. But I have no real interest either. Maybe I will go back. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. I should be a completist about Carry On. But I have seen so many of the others, and when I read through the titles, like, I can remember them. Like, I remember the actors in specific ways. Like, there are so many that I wish I could have rewatched for this, but just in general. But I did get to add my favorite one in, and we did watch that.
Good.
But let's start nearly at the very beginning with Carry On Nurse, where it seems like the franchise was like, let's do it. Let's go full hog into this campy world. What did you make of Carry On Nurse? Had you seen it before?
So when I went back to watch Carry On Nurse, I think this is the one, or it's coupled with Matron and Doctor, of the one I remembered. I remember Charles Hawtrey dressed as the nurse, for example. Um, what was interesting about going back to this one is that I think, and it's only now that you've given me the context, is I think I'm more familiar with the latter writing rather than the earlier writing. So I was like, oh, this one's actually, I mean, it has the winky winky nudge nudge nudge, but I found it to be quite tasteful and the plotting was very interesting. Like it sort of meanders in an interesting way, and it doesn't ever really feel like it's going anywhere until sort of the end. It's sort of just you're there, you're in an environment, and you're just watching things play out, which is no bad thing. Um, I really enjoyed this one. I think there are moments of it, especially are fun. There were performances that are a lot of fun. Um, and because you have them all together in this one space, it creates a lot of opportunity. Hattie Jacques, you need to call out because she is matron, and that is very iconic. She would maybe then go on to be fairly typecast across the series, like many of them could be, as you've said, with sort of Kenneth Williams. But it's fun. She has a presence. I certainly also really remembered her from this one. But yeah, this is the one that's ringing all the bells for me from kind of my daytime TV watching youth on, say, bank holidays. So yeah, nice specific nostalgia. What about you with Nurse?
Remember, like I remember it along with the others, but now I guess with more experience watching films and being, whatever, God, it's probably nearly 20 years since I would have seen it. I really liked it. I felt very kind of much more elegant than I imagine any Carry On film to be. So,
Exactly.
like, the setup is in this men's ward in a hospital, and they all have different ailments. And they all, as well, kind of have an ego complex, which is very entertaining to watch these
Yeah.
men struggle with having to have women in charge. And I really enjoyed it. Like, I found it really playful. You have
Yeah.
Kenneth Williams, you have Kenneth Connor, you have Charles Hawtrey. You just have these men doing really fun things. Like, I absolutely love Charles Hawtrey trying to listen to the radio all the time. Love, as you say, Hattie Jacques coming in, this domineering sort of presence. Like, they're all like ticking boxes for no reason, simply because she's the matron and she said. And Kenneth Williams, like, dared to stand up to her in quite like a very exciting encounter.
I wonder, though, if you could satisfy my curiosity on one point.
I will try. What is the point, Mr. Rickett?
Why must I endure the extra pain of getting into and out of bed when I can rest just as effectively lying on top of the bedclothes?
I don't like to see men lying about. It makes the ward look untidy.
I see. It isn't a medical rule.
I don't see what that has to do with it.
And I think Kenneth Williams and Hattie Jacques are very exciting to watch together. Whether they're being like romancing or in this quite
Yeah.
aggressive. And then, yeah, and I think out of all the Carry On films, this is one that I think does better when it comes to like gender representation. And by that I mean like there is only men and women. So I'm talking about basically positive kind of representation of women because they kind of have the last word in everything. And it's the men that have to fall into line. So I'm not going to spoil like it, but the men try to like they find alcohol and they decide to take the matter into their own hands, which doesn't work well.
No.
In quite a fun, entertaining way. And at the very end, there's this guy who's been like putting on bets all throughout the film, and he's been told he was taking his temperature up the bum, I should say.
My.
And when the matron comes in, it's like, what is going on? And he's like,
Come, matron. Surely you've seen a temperature taken like this before?
Yes, Colonel, many times. But never with a daffodil.
It's so strange. It's such a strange pun.
But it's a pun. See, I just thought it was just a silly
Oh
thing.
yeah, no, just silly.
Oh,
It's
I
not
see.
a pun. Yeah, there's no pun in it. I should say that's a strange joke
Yeah,
gag.
it's very like on the nose. Well, it's not even on the nose. It's just like it doesn't really make sense. But the thing about it, which I think is kind of similar to many Carry On films, particularly the ones that aren't parodies, is not much happens. You're kind of in a in a sequence with these characters. You don't really know where it's heading because there's no like sort of traditional sort of structure in a way, and then bang, then sometimes there's suddenly a bit of a story and it's over. And yeah, I really recommend Carry On Nurse. I thought it was really entertaining, and you have a lot of the great Carry On ensemble there.
Yeah, it is. It is I think a very solid film, and it's very representative of that time capsule British humor. So I think it's definitely a good entry point, and also being, like we said, the highest grossing of the series is not for nothing. I would say too. Do you think? Do you think this was the difference in it, and be it the kind of elegance or the more softness of some of the jokes? Do you think that is purely down to the writer? Is that still, do you think, an establishing of the Carry On brand?
I think it's a bit of both. I think, yeah, certainly it was establishing itself, but also there was a choice by Gerald Thomas and Peter Rogers, who produced all these films, to go with the much more kind of raucous, broad, raunchy sort of comedy that Talbot Rothwell was doing. So there was a choice to move away and depart from, I don't know, the kind of, yeah, more elegant. I think that is a good way to describe kind of how those earlier films were compared to the much more broad sort of comedy that we get. Which I mean, I think Carry On wouldn't be remembered if it hadn't gone into that
Yes,
territory.
I agree.
So it's not that I think it's a shame, but I would have liked more of the raunchier films, or and I hate using the word raunchy. I make it sound like I'm a
You
90-year-old
are
man.
raunchy though. You're a raunchy guy.
They, I just wish some of them had that sort of elegance because I think it would have elevated them. But then that's not the point. They are supposed to be entertainment for the masses, like cats.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
um,
Same, same.
well, cats
Do
and
you
Carry On, nothing much. It doesn't make much sense, and then at the end they try to scramble for a story. So I think Cats might have. If only Gerald Thomas directed Cats, I think I would watch that.
yeah. And another thing about this one, but I think it is true of all of them, is there is such a balance in the humor, and I think that goes into what you were saying before about you having your sort of Kenneth Williams and what he's up to, and you get that queerness, whereas then you also get what, say, Sid James and all these other actors throughout the series are up to. This one does feel very balanced, though, the sort of kind of
Yeah.
intellectualism of Kenneth Williams' character versus the sillier types of, say, Charles Hawtrey or other players in there. Which I just thought, I feel like it is just a really solid film. Who for you in this one is the most solid of the cast?
Like, I think it's Kenneth Williams, but I would say Kenneth Williams is someone I'm drawn to. Like, I think even as a kid, if if Kenneth Williams wasn't in the Carry On film, I'm not sure I would be that excited to watch it.
Sure. The reason I asked that question with this one though is because that's exactly how I would feel, but I think Charles Hawtrey is the standout in
But do
Carry On
you?
Nurse.
That's interesting because the other person is Kenneth Connor, who is playing this boxer who's brought in, and he's very in. Yeah, and he does this a lot, but he's very endearing. They like want to take off his shorts, and he can't because he can't use his hand because it's all plastered up. He gets like very awkward.
Now,
Hey, what? What?
well, you can't sleep in those.
That's quite all right. I can take them off.
With one hand?
Yeah, I can manage. Thank you. You two ladies, just turn your backs, please. Be good. Oh, wait a minute. Hey, what's going on? You can't. What a sauce. Nurse, please. Oh.
Oh, what a fuss about such a little thing.
Quite cute, like a very like adorable performance, and I think there's something really nice about him amongst all these other performances. But that's the beauty of Carry On too. I feel like loads of people could watch one film and they'd all take away either their favorite character, their favorite performer. And that's what I mean. I'm biased. I'm very biased about Kenneth Williams because I just naturally am drawn to a campy, snobby, posh veering on like very like lower class sort of thing, like having notions of yourself.
Yeah.
So Kenneth Williams to me is amazing, and I think when I was a kid, I was like, when I grow up, I want to be Kenneth Williams.
Oh.
And well, speaking of this more like broad comedy, let's do Carry On Camping.
Okay.
Carry On Camping, the serious tale of
This one's very serious, so we have to take this one very seriously.
this. Yeah, we could. This is quite dark. Well, do you know what? Some of it is dark, like could be told in quite a dark way. But there's different storylines going on. So you have two men, Sid James and Bernard Bresslaw, who basically want to have sex, bring their girlfriends to see like a cinema showing of a promo video of a nudist camp. Is that what they like? I
Yeah.
was like, is this an advert before the film, or is the cinema just showing this advert for a nudist camp?
Very
And
strange.
these men are bringing these women on a date to look at it. Anyway, they want to go. The men want to go to a nudist camp. The women want to get married. It seems like that's their goal, or a boyfriend at the very least. Then we have another couple, Mr. Fiddler and Mrs. Fiddler. This is where it gets dark. And he wants to go on a sun holiday, and she wants to go camping. And that's pretty much that. And then you have these schoolgirls going on a camping trip with, again, matronly Hattie Jacques and Kenneth Williams in the park, where he's like, actually, what is he? Is he a headmaster? I don't know.
He's
what
called
he's
a
doing.
doctor. They keep calling
Oh my
him
God.
doctor.
Oh my God, that's it. He's Dr. Soper.
Yeah.
And I was trying to figure out, is that a play on words that I don't get? Soper, Dr. Soper. It may be. I
can't find it.
I'm too. We're saying it's too like lowbrow, and yet we don't get it. Anyway, Dr. Soper and the teacher are bringing these girls, including Barbara Windsor, to the campsite. But there is a kind of a romance between Kenneth Williams and Hattie Jacques. In short, there's so much going on. Oh, also, let's include Charles Hawtrey is making his own way to the camp and like just finds his way through things, including meeting a farmer's daughter, where he asks her,
"What's a nice girl like you doing with an old cow?"
I'm taking her to the bull.
To the bull? Oh, couldn't your father do that?
No, it has to be the bull.
Has to be the...
That to me is golden humor.
Oh my God. Yeah. This is my favorite. I think Carry On Camping is the funniest of the ones I've seen. Hey, there might be one of the 31 out there that I haven't seen that I think is even funnier. But this hits the nail on the head of certainly what I remember as Carry On. And I don't know if that's a good thing or if that's the way you should reflect on films. Like, this is what I remember, so therefore this is the best. No. Watching the other ones, though, like, I certainly laughed, like watching Carry On Nurse, for example. But with this one, and I don't know if it's just that I also enjoyed a little bit more wine as I was watching it than when I was watching other films, but I was laughing a lot. The kind of the puns, like the one you just described, I loved, and also just the strange ways they go with the dialogue really was tickling me. From everyone. This film, I think, is them really understanding the cast's strengths, and everyone gets to play up to it. Everyone is funny in this film. Like, I can't think of a strongest player here because everyone made me laugh a lot. There's a joke in particular where we have Sid and Joan just about to head off, and Joan's character's mother saying,
"Oh no, I'm not having a go without plenty of woolies. Not with her funny kidneys."
Oh, do stop that, Mum. There's nothing wrong with my kidneys.
You know perfectly well a chill goes straight to 'em, just like your father. Always on the trot he was.
This is so strangely specific, but it made me laugh so much. That whole sequence was great. Oh, I had so much fun watching this film. I had so much fun. The physical jokes are much better
Yeah,
here than in some of the earlier ones,
yeah,
certainly. Um, and like we're saying, this is all filmed around Pinewood Studios, so they literally filmed this in a field. But you feel the movement of this film. I think this one is
yeah,
quite cinematic,
yeah.
considering like there is a journey. They're all going on this holiday. They all end up on this campsite, which is a field down the road from Pinewood Studios. But I'm on holiday with them, and I'm having a
Yeah.
fabulous time. Is the only way to look at it. I love Carry On Camping.
It made me really want to go camping.
Oh.
And I think most people will know this if even if they've not seen Carry On and they just like know British or English culture because of the scene where Kenneth Williams has the schoolgirls exercising in the field and Barbara Windsor's they're throwing her arms back.
And fling and in. And both arms fling. Now really, let's see those chests come out.
And her oh my god I'm struggling with words. It's so naughty. No. No, her bikini top like flings
Oh,
open.
shoots off.
And fling. Oh, matron, take them away.
So
It's so wonderful.
it's just all like camp fun humor. And now again there are parts where totally it is it's aged.
Yeah, this one's leerier, pervier, rapier than the
Yeah,
earlier
so you
ones.
have the two men who want to go to the nudist camp, not ending up in a nudist camp, and like perving is probably a polite wording for
Very
what they're
polite.
doing. Predatory behavior, including looking through a hole into the women's shower, things like that. But yeah, I agree with you. I think it's really strong. It's really good. It's really enjoyable. It's the sort of thing you would expect to carry on. And I don't think it's aged as much as I thought it was going to. And I didn't think I'd laugh quite as much as I did.
No, I was expecting the same. I remembered this one being leerier because of, say, the bra joke and all of these things. But it's also why I found it funny. There was this sort of this one being even more kind of playful on that side of things.
Hmm.
Oh, yeah. Just genuinely really funny, and I'm therefore not surprised. I think, like, certain newspaper polls when sort of ranking the Carry On films, I think it was the Mirror, voters put this one at the top, and that doesn't surprise me. I think it feels quintessentially Carry On for those who, like me, might have been more passive viewers of the series.
But what did the Guardian readers vote?
Oh gosh, all of them. Actually, there's many articles in the Guardian on Carry On and the value of Carry On Cleo and maybe Carry On Up the Khyber. So maybe that's where they would go.
Yeah, I think Carry On Cleo is more like a highbrow sort of choice, and we'll get onto that shortly. But before we do, I just because this is the only one we're talking about where Barbara Windsor is
Sure.
part of it, to just take a moment to say, like, Barbara Windsor, everyone's very good in it, but she is doing something which she does so well in the Carry On films, which is be the dumb blonde that is actually very smart.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like in Carry On Spying, to the point where she has a photographic memory. And that is the joy of it. I mean, she's also walking like tits first in the Carry On franchise. And like her boobs, as she rightly should be proud of them, are being utilized. But you have a sense of she is game and she's the one that's leading that. That's the persona she is portraying.
Trainee Agent Daphne Honeybutt, sir.
Number?
382235.
No, your number, not your vital thingamajigs.
Oh, I'm sorry, sir. I forgot where I was for the moment. Actually, it's 4711.
Have you had any experience?
Oh, yes, a little.
And it's really powerful. Like in Carry On Camping, she is meddling with Hattie Jacques and Kenneth Williams to make them, potentially fall in love. She pushes Sid James away. Like she's quite powerful. I do think like if you're to dwell too much on it, it's a bit like, well, women can look after themselves, sort of thing, which is like, well, no, we all need allies, and the sort of person that Barbara Windsor is playing and the sort of behavior that Sid James is exhibiting is a really dangerous sort of combination, because he seems so determined to have sex. Um, and I'm not sure consent is something that man, the way he's portraying that sort of persona, I'm not sure consent is something that he is interested in, let's say. But perhaps you could argue otherwise because he's not interested in having sex with his girlfriend because he thinks she's a prude. So, so maybe there's a lot you could kind of dwell on. Yeah. So no, that's just a note to say. Barbara Windsor, great Carry On ensemble team player.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and the birthed an icon of British TV and cinema that will forever live strong. Barbara Windsor is a queen and an icon.
She also was a friend of Boris Johnson, so we're not all
Well,
perfect.
let's talk of that.
So the highbrow choice, which is my choice for favorite Carry On, is, as you said, or as we said, Carry On Cleo, which is short for Cleopatra. And for those not in the know. And it is literally the story of Julius Caesar, Mark Antony, and Cleopatra, like a send up of these films, particularly Cleopatra, the Elizabeth Taylor film that was coming out around the same time. I actually should have checked this before. I believe Cleopatra came out just at the same time, was it?
It ended up coming out afterwards. So what had
Yeah.
happened is they were set to film in England and they had these sets and these costumes and everything ready to go. Production then moved to Italy, I believe, and took a very long time. Carry
Yeah.
On then stepped in and used the sets and used the costumes and
Yeah.
put out the film, understandably, given the kind of tight budgets and turnaround of them, before Cleopatra came out.
Yeah. It's so fun. Like the costumes. We're talking about like Carry On Camping being cinematic, but Carry On Cleo is equally s- like beautiful. Like it stands
Yeah.
up to any movie that was being made. Really, not any movie, but most of the movies being made at
Yeah,
that time
sure.
for the cost that it was done for. And I'd argue like this is another example of the cast being on top form. The writers totally understanding what that cast can do. So you have Sid James playing Mark Antony, Kenneth Williams playing Caesar, and Amanda Berry, who only did two Carry On films, but she plays Cleopatra.
I was so delighted to see her here. I hadn't seen this one before, and when I saw Alma from Coronation Street playing
Oh my God,
Cleopatra, I was
Alma.
like, how could things get better? How could anything get better than this?
Yeah. And she's an openly queer woman now, so it's like very, I'm just like anything queer culture with Carry On, I'll just throw in together. And then you have Joan Sim again playing Caesar's wife, and Charles Hawtrey playing the father-in-law to Caesar, and you have Jim Dale and Kenneth Connor playing these slaves. That also have a storyline that is working alongside the main storyline. I just really find it funny. I just think it's really like well written. Like some of the dialogue, like the most famous one, like and probably one of the most famous lines in any kind of British comedy is like Kenneth Williams Caesar is being stabbed at the Senate.
Infamy! Infamy! They've all got it in for me!
Which is like, yes, like this is so on the money. There's also like Charles Hawtrey having these visions, and he's like, "Oh, I see these men with these dirty swords," and all these sorts of comments. I just find it so funny, and it's also there's a great line where Kenneth Williams is having his hair done.
Where's my laurels?
Here they are, my lord.
No, silly me. I've been resting on them.
Yes.
Those lines, like this whole thing in this film in particular is peppered in of like the working class being frustrated with those ruling, and it's really fun to see like a really like ineffectual but somewhat charismatic person in that sort of room. Like, yeah, like all these leaders are caring about is like Cleopatra and war. They should really be focused on like feeding people and like healthcare and all these sorts of things. And watching it today in the world we're in, I was like, this still speaks to today. Like, I'm watching this thinking this is crazy that the leaders we've governed are having parties during a COVID lockdown and doing all these things and having us distracted, whereas they're just not focusing on like real issues.
Yeah.
So I found it quite powerful in a way I didn't expect.
Yeah, wow, well, that's wicked. I love that.
But then they also have things like they're trying to sell square wheels.
Oh, where I come from, they have things to go on carts, but, well, they're sort of round, like that.
Oh, yes. I know all about those. But the trouble with them is, you see, that if you stop on a hill, they start to roll backwards. Now, this one won't, you see.
Ah, but will it roll forwards?
Oh my god! But those jokes also, hey, it's all about balance, and when Carry On strikes the balance, it's a wonderful thing. This one feels like very much like the line. Which I like. I'm very much into the fast gag approach of Carry On when it works, and here it works. Even just kind of sillier little ones like
They call her the Siren of the Nile.
Oh, I hope she don't go off.
and it's it's just like because it creates a visual gag in your own mind. It's a stupid throwaway line, but it's not. It's so good. Oh, I just like eating up. And Kenneth Williams, I think here at his best for sure. I
Yeah.
think this is him at his strongest, and we get to have the most fun with him. And he also gets to do a lot. He sort of gets to play different shades of this character. Yes, albeit we get campy Caesar, but there's different moments, and he has pieces to camera, and he has pieces to a crowd, and it's so much fun. I'm not surprised that I read somewhere that I think it was Michael Caine who said that Liz Taylor and Richard Burton used to actually show this film when people would come to visit them
Yeah.
because they enjoyed it so much. So that's a wonderful way of looking at what they did off the back of this film existing.
Yeah. But Cleopatra being like this 4 hour, again, I have seen that I love Elizabeth Taylor, but I would watch Carry On Cleo any day over Cleopatra.
Oh,
Um,
sure.
Yes, great. And there's all like I feel like Carry On does do really well when it has, as you're saying, like they're line, but the reason is because they have a story. So like Carry On Spying or Screaming are a bit more focused on a narrative than
Right.
say Carry On Camping and Carry On Girls and all some of these ones. And I think it works well when the performers are bringing their charisma, uniqueness, nerve, and talent.
Gorgeous.
No, but which they have. They all have it in spades. Which is why I really regret the film that we chose to also look at in this bunch was the very last one, Carry On Columbus, because that has none of those things. Like it doesn't have the cast to be able they don't have the cast with the charisma to deliver lines which, even if they're silly or whatever, it just doesn't punctuate. And even, like before they understood music and how music can help punctuate a joke, that doesn't happen in the same way. It feels like a cheap television movie. You have like Larry Miller, is it, as a Native American kind of king, which is really strange.
Yeah, strange choice.
There's so many kind of odd. It's just lacking any sort of charm. Like I really was so disappointed. And so Carry On Columbus is about Christopher Columbus, with Jim Dale returning to the Carry On series to play the titular role. And even he's lost. Like he's a bit lost in this. And I don't know what it is, but it doesn't work. And I just feel like there's actors after actor after actor who just can't deliver the lines. And when they do find somebody who can, you'll probably know, what's the guy who plays Victor Meldrew?
Oh gosh, his name, Richard Wilson.
Richard Wilson, he is not in it enough, but Lord, could he actually fit in the world. Like he
Yes.
is wonderfully campy sort of humor, or tone to his voice, but also deep and like very Kenneth Williams sort of commanding screen presence. But sadly, we're also stuck with a whole lot of other people that just can't deliver. So like even like Julian Clary, I think is particularly bad.
And this is Marco, the serial killer.
A serial killer?
Beats his victims to death with a sack of Rice Krispies.
But then you also have like, I'm going to say this name wrong, Rick Mayall?
Rick Mail, who is an incredibly talented comedy
So
actor.
good.
Yeah.
Drop Dead Fred, amazing. In this, just like, not nothing, but it's just not the same. I don't know what they were aiming for, but it just doesn't work.
Yeah, it's weird. It opens on the kind of Rick Mail sequence, and from there, straight away, I was like, whoa, this feels less cinematic, but probably cost a shitload more to make. Yeah, a weirdly wasted cast because a lot of interesting people in there. Like it is like a lot of big hitters, specifically of British TV and film at the time. Yeah, like Julian Clary is not doing what he needs to do. I'm not mad about it. I love that Julian Clary got like a part in a film like this because otherwise he was sort of, late night TV and stand up in the UK. But it just feels like such an obvious choice. They went like, oh, who can do sort of Kenneth Williams? And they're like, I guess like Julian Clary. And it just feels too obvious, but does not work because, like you say, the charisma is not there.
Because
yeah,
the jokes are so similar. Like there's one which could have been nailed so well by any of the old actors, where there's this woman who's posing for a portrait.
Well, I'm off to Italy next week. Michelangelo wants to do me up on the ceiling.
Well, you mind you hang on to something while you're up there.
So, well, let's set aside like the whole like rewriting queer history there, as Michelangelo was gay.
Yeah.
But it's the delivery of that line is symptomatic of the whole film.
Yeah, no, for sure. Because there are funny jokes on paper, but it's lost here. It's basically this happening in 1992 was already past it at that point. It was done. The style had died. We revisit this series as a time capsule, and it exists there, and we can enjoy it looking back on it. 1992 was not the time to be trying to replicate Carry On.
But there were 2 other Columbus movies out in 1992.
Really?
And this was the most popular one.
Oh, wow.
And the one of the others was 1492, Conquest of Paradise, directed by Ridley Scott, with Sigourney Weaver and Gerard Depardieu.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And this did better. So at the UK box office,
Sure.
I'd say.
Sure.
So it is interesting. Yeah, it's a real missed opportunity, and all those kind of glorious things we enjoy about these big performances in these sometimes silly, sometimes terrifically well written piece of dialogue is just totally gone. Which is a shame. Yeah. So I mean, to summarize, don't watch Carry On Columbus. I'd nearly watch nearly any of the other, even at the ones that I remember even as a kid being like Carry On Girls. I remember being like, oh, I don't like this because of how they're talking about women. I'd probably put Carry On Columbus behind even that.
Okay. Yeah. This is...
Well, you have a lot of blackface. You have a lot of all sorts of faces, all sorts of like strange, not appropriate, like offensive, weird. It's just not great.
It's far from great. Yes, avoid this one for sure.
Do you think Carry On does have a place for people to be watching them today?
Yes, I do. I think you take it with the knowledge that this is from a different era, but it is very, very true and faithful to A, British humor, but B, working class British humor. And I think that's a really, really important thing to keep a hold of. It launched an incredible array of talent, not as far as they should have been, but into the kind of iconography of British culture. And I think those are things to be celebrated even still. So I would say seek out the good ones. Seek out Cleo. Seek out Carry On Camping for the bawdier side of it. And then the kind of old school, more elegant pieces like Carry On Nurse. So yeah, I think so.
I totally agree. And I do think there's joy in rewatching it and understanding like the queerness in it.
Yeah, that's a
I
very
mean,
good
you could do
point.
a whole like podcast just focused on queerness and Carry On. And I hope some podcast that focuses on that sort of thing I'd love to listen to it. But that's probably one of the reasons I'm drawn to the like Kenneth Williams, Charles Hawtrey characters, because they're so openly queer coded, not even coded, they are saying gay things. Like
Yes.
it's, in the Cara Cleo, he literally says,
Oh, I do feel queer.
and it's like, that's not, as some people might want to believe, like, oh, he wouldn't have known what that word meant. It's like, Kenneth Williams knew exactly what that word was. That is not an accident that
No.
word is in there.
No.
So for those reasons alone, I'd be recommending them, but I wouldn't be recommending them to anyone sensitive to presentations or representations of gender, sexuality, anything like that, because I don't think these are empowering to any sort of non-heterosexual even white men. Like, in sometimes I'm not sure if this white men would get what they want out, what they might think they get out of them, because most of the time they kind of struggle for most of the movie to get what they want. Sadly, they end up getting what they want most of the time at the end.
They do.
But yeah, so yes, I highly recommend them. I presume, even though they tease this, we will never get another Carry On.
No, it sounds like it keeps trying to rear its head, but I think it's failing to do so since 1992 suggests, yes, we're done here.
And I am really intrigued to see what quiz you've made up for this Carry On episode. But I'm also really nervous as I'm like, I putting myself forward as this really big fan, and then you're going to ask me very simple questions. And I'm like, I don't know that.
No, exactly. You set yourself up here. So we're going to see just how you fare. So Carry On, quiz time. Do you have a prize that you want to fight for, Michael?
Oh, we do this every episode, and I don't know why I didn't think about this. I would like Barbara Windsor as Peggy Mitchell in EastEnders to slap me.
A fabulous choice. Accepted.
I pretend I've not thought about this all my life.
You absolute liar. Right, here we go. Let's test your Carry On trivia. Which Carry On star was the voice of the American versions of the Harry Potter audiobooks? So in England or the UK, and I think now globally, Stephen Fry is renowned for his voicing of the Harry Potter audiobooks. However, the American market had somebody else doing them, and it was a Carry On star.
Well, I'm trying to think who was still alive at that time. Jim Dale?
Yes, correct. Jim Dale.
Amazing.
Yes. And he is wonderful. I remember not being able to track down the Stephen Fry ones when I was a kid, so I probably did something that would be considered illegal to get them online. And it was the Jim Dale versions, and I thought he did a wonderful job. He was so good. So a great choice. Well done. Which of the Carry On cast was considered for the part of Willy Wonka in the 70s film version?
That was Kenneth Williams?
Yes, it was Kenneth Williams, which makes complete sense. It would have been a very, very different version, but I love that his name was thrown out there for that.
I would love to see. I mean, Kenneth Williams deserves so much more, but he deserved that part.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just putting it out there.
Yeah, fair. Which Carry On star was nominated for a Tony Award?
Barbara,
tell us about
for a Joan Littlewood production. Is it like things ain't what they used to be? Was it, or
no? It is for Oh What a Lovely War.
Of course, yeah. She again, she deserved to be so much more.
And speaking of kind of her partnering with Joan Littlewood, I've not seen it, but you're a fan of the film they did together, right?
Oh, Sparrows Can't Sing, yes. Well, firstly, it's about a young woman in East London, in an East London that doesn't exist anymore, like post-war, bombed out, and it's all been rebuilt. So it's fascinating to just watch for that. But to see Barbara Windsor in this, naturalistic kind of, I'd say light drama might be the best way, unless I'm remembering wrong, is really great. So she's like BAFTA nominated for that for Best Actress in a Film. Joan Littlewood should have been given way more opportunities to make films. She made some amazing theatre and facilitated great theatre being made. And it's a real shame that she didn't get to do more.
Lovely. Well, I'm glad that film exists, and certainly one I'll put on my list to check out. And then coming full circle and going back to Harry Potter, which of the Carry On cast plays, or I should say voices, the Sorting Hat in the Harry Potter films?
It can't be Jim Dale again.
It's not Jim Dale again, no.
I honestly couldn't tell you what the Sorting Hat is. Kenneth Connor, was he still around?
Let me tell you. So the Hat is voiced by Leslie Phillips.
Oh, I didn't even know he was it. Carry On. Leslie Phillips is the sort of British actor. When you say his name, I'm like, yeah, him. I wouldn't have clocked him in Carry On. But apologies, Leslie.
Oh wow! Oh no, he is in quite a few of the Carry Ons, including Columbus. Unfortunately for him.
I think I just blocked this man out. Oh my lord.
Oh dear, oh dear.
Although maybe I'm thinking of the wrong person. Oh my god. As punishment, we're going to have to do him as an episode.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, if you fail on this round, we're going to have to do Leslie Phillips. This round is something I couldn't resist doing. We had a few of the Carry On alum move on to work in British soaps, of course. Some of them perhaps more iconic than others. So what you're going to get here is a clip, and in that clip there will be at least two voices, and in each clip, two voices are both stars from the Carry On series. So
Oh
I
my
want you to
gosh.
tell me who these performers are.
Okay.
Or their characters in the soaps.
Mm-hmm.
Here comes the first one.
I'm so pleased you could make it today.
Yes, I'm glad I came. There's just something I'd like to say, though.
Go on.
I nearly didn't come.
Yeah, I know.
No, shush. I want to say my piece. I came because I wanted to come.
So that started off, and I was in a Carry On mood. She goes, I came because I wanted to come. It's like, what?
Yeah, it's exactly. It's as saucy as Carry On.
That is Amanda Berry as Alma in Coronation Street.
It sure
Although
is.
it took me so long to not think of Olivia Colman, who I think would actually, if you were going to revive Carry On, Olivia Colman would be quite a fun shout.
Oh, well, sure, she could do that very well.
That's the matronly sort of thing. Is it Jim Dale? I'm just going to keep saying Jim Dale.
It's not Jim Dale. So you're right in saying that was Amanda Barry as Alma, but that was also Mike Baldwin, an iconic character in Coronation Street. They were married in the show. Played by Johnny Briggs, who was in Carry On England, Carry On Up the Khyber, and Carry On Behind.
Of course I know Mike. He was quite a handsome gentleman.
Sure. Here comes another.
I hope you're proud of yourselves.
If it's true, which I seriously doubt it is.
Of course it's true.
Jane, and my boy, like a cafe skivvy would interest him. Up to her armpits in greasy burgers, no. I don't think so.
That is Dame Barbara Windsor as Peggy Mitchell.
Sure is.
And Pauline. Oh, that's so annoying. Because I love her as well, and she's also terrific in Are You Being Served? Oh, that's so not Collins. It's not Pauline Collins.
No.
Pauline.
Begins with F.
F. Are we talking about her real name or her...
No, this is a character.
Oh, Pauline Fowler. But
Pauline
then I'm getting
Fowler,
confused
yes.
about... Is it Wendy? No.
Wendy, yes.
Oh, I don't know if I know her say...
Her
Wendy
s-
Collins?
No,
Oh,
so
where am I getting confused?
Wendy Richards.
Oh, I
yes.
knew it.
Oh, well, very,
Love
very
them.
close. Who was so obviously Barbara Windsor was in many, many Carry On films. Wendy Richard was in Carry On Matron, Carry On Girls, and Carry On Christmas, which was a TV installment. Very well done. Okay, have another.
You sure you didn't bang your head, love?
I've already said that I didn't.
Well, we should be getting you to the hospital.
How many more times? There is no need.
Are you making that tea, Jimmy, or growing it?
So it's either Fenella Fielding or Sheila Hancock. Is it either of those people?
It is neither of those, no.
I'm trying to think who the like posh, plummy English lady is.
What soap do you think this is?
Emmerdale?
It is Emmerdale, yes.
Oh my god, does she have jet black hair? No.
She's famous for wearing a hat to conceal her hair.
Blanche. Oh no, not Blanche. Edna.
It's Edna
Sorry,
Burt.
I confused two elderly women. Oh, I loved Edna.
Yeah, she was fabulous. So Edna was played by Shirley Stelfox, who was in Carry On at Your Convenience. And then we had the one male voice in there who was part of the Carry On franchise. Are we familiar with the Men of Emmerdale?
I wish. Although now I can't picture literally any man from Emmerdale, so don't know what I mean by that.
Well, the one I was looking for was the character Rodney Blackstock, who is played by Patrick Maurer, who was in Carry On England.
Oh Lord, well this is all too much for me. I'm never going to get my slap.
Oh God, we really wanted you to have that slap, though.
So, to round this off, usually we talk about what we want in the future for the performer or the individual we're talking about. As this is an ensemble cast and a franchise, I guess we felt like it was a good idea to look at maybe what we would have loved to have seen some of the cast members do.
Yeah.
And I don't know like who or what jumped out at you at first.
So I'm going to start off with Charles Hawtrey, just because I think he was the one who maybe stuck out in my memory as much as anyone else, and I had forgotten about that. So I was sort of most delighted to go back and watch him because it was more surprising to say Kenneth Williams or Babs, who I knew I was going to be delighted by. But what I really see for him, I mean, he had a really interesting career before going into kind of Carry On, like, was in a kind of a number of British films prior to that, Canterbury Tales and things like that included. But he does this unique style of camp so well, which I can only compare to, or could be harnessed by, a John Waters. If John Waters ever decided to make something like very English or very British, I could just see him fitting into that world very neatly. And then on a kind of different way, if we had Charles Hawtrey today, I would love to see him in like an In Fabric, so a Peter Strickland film. I reckon that would be a wonderful pairing. He could be working in that shop, doing that sort of unnerving weird that Peter Strickland does so well, and not to kind of slight Charles Hawtrey too much, but I just think it would be a natural pairing.
That's wonderful. Mine is something I think about quite often is Jim Dale was a very good singer. He was like the lead in the Broadway production of Barnum with Glenn Close in the 80s. And so there's two things I was thinking with that. Firstly, if like Disney were doing spin-offs back in the day, you could have done a Dick Van Dyke Bert from Mary Poppins spin-off where he meets his brother, played by Jim Dale. And they could have just had like a jolly old time doing something, jumping into paintings, causing mischief. I don't know, just some sort of film. along those lines. And then just like a film production of Barnum and
Yeah.
have Jim Dale and Glenn Close and all these people. Yeah, I think Jim Dale is maybe not the most memorable of Carry On performers, which is fair enough, but he's really solid and he's probably more quiet than the others, which is why in Carry On Columbus as a lead, maybe that's doesn't work when there's not these strong personalities around him to bounce off. But I'm a big fan.
Love that. Good. Well, Jim Dale, a wonderful thing. Let's see more of him. Okay, so to go to another, maybe we haven't spoken about her enough in this, but is an absolute delight and Carry On, is Joan Sims. She brings such cheer in her kind of voice and her delivery, and she's very funny and
Yeah.
sparky and again, very quintessentially Carry On. If I think about it, I think of this type of female performer, certainly. And I kind of liken her to, say, Brenda Blethyn in Secrets and Lies, and therefore
Yeah.
I think a Mike Leigh pairing for Joan Sims could have been an absolutely brilliant thing, and I really don't think out of the question. I could see her playing any of these mothers, aunties that we get throughout the kind of Mike Leigh back catalogue, and I wish it is something that we could have seen because she's a delight. I also could see her slotting into those sort of Poirot films that we got in the 70s, 80s, like Death on the Nile, or Murder on the Orient Express, which now Branagh's remaking. But then saying that, I think we could have the whole Carry On bunch doing that and it not being the Carry On that we're used to, but they would all, like Kenneth Williams and all these people, would slot beautifully into there. But yeah, I would love to have seen Joan Sims doing things like that and have those opportunities.
But we do have, in some ways, Kenneth Williams via Maggie Smith in Evil Under the Sun.
Very true.
Like, I feel like, I mean, we both absolutely adore Maggie Smith, but she's really good friends with Kenneth Williams, and they work together, and you can see where her admiration of him informed quite a bit of her work, which is brilliant. But yeah, I feel like that sort of like sassy, uppity British woman behind the desk, basically a gay with a clipboard, is what she's doing in Evil Under the Sun, and that's also something Kenneth did very well. And yeah, he's the other person that I thought about, which of course, as I was saying earlier, I would find hard not to. And what I would have loved in the ideal scenario, if no timelines wouldn't have worked, is to have had him in a beautiful, elegant, kind of Carol-esque romantic drama with Murray Melvin, who I think is a really wonderful, underappreciated British actor. Also from the East End, so people might know him from, he was in Barry Lyndon, the Stanley Kubrick film, but also was in A Taste of Honey, the Tony Richardson film, and won Best Actor at Cannes. And he's this really delicate sort of presence on screen. And I just think like Williams, there's no doubt that Kenneth Williams could have done that really beautifully, and we didn't get to see so much of that sort of shade of his talent. So I would have loved to have seen them together. And yeah, let's have Joan Littlewood direct it, because I think Joan Littlewood can do no wrong. Or if we can or Tony Richardson, or bring Terence Davies back in time, whatever. I just would love to have seen something like that.
That's beautiful. Well, lovely, lovely suggestion. Oh, it really is. I think the biggest joy in going back and reflecting on this was seeing a really talented bunch of performers getting to work together and get to have so much fun. And because I guess what they were getting along the way, unfortunately, was being very, very underpaid. The leading men getting 5,000 per film, the women getting half of that, and that was consistent throughout the whole thing. So they truly deserved a lot more, and therefore any of these suggestions would have been a really amazing things to see. But we do have the capsule that is Carry On, and I'm glad that we're able to revisit and enjoy their fun performances along the way.
Yeah, yeah. And in like I've something about it, and I guess I don't say this usually, and I also hope this comes across as well intentioned, but I go and watch them and kind of leave whatever at the door,
Yeah.
because they are problematic, but they can be enjoyed in a certain way. And it's up to you whether they should be or not, but I get a lot out of them too.
Yeah. No, I think so.
So, where can people find us, Scott, if they want to tell us how wrong we are about Carry On?
Why have you decided to veer off this path for this series of all series? Please let us know how wrong you may or may not think we were by doing this. You can get us on social media, Instagram and Twitter at don'tknowher_pod. Or you can email us if you fancy writing a really long hate article. don'tknowherpod@gmail.com.
And please do rate and review us wherever you listen to podcasts. Share us with a friend. Share us on
Please.
social media.
Yeah.
We'd love all that. We also do usually ask if you share it to one person that you think would enjoy it. That would be super. And yeah, next week we're going to be returning to our usual schedule of our usual program of focusing on one actor. And we'll also be celebrating a very special birthday.
Yes, we will. A big episode coming.
So until then, goodbye.
Have a lovely day. Bye bye bye.